Hey everyone, welcome to today's live stream. It's Paul Toby here. Thanks for joining me and taking the time out of your busy Saturday to spend a little bit of time with us here on the Jazzmentl YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about the worst 2/5 mistake that a lot of people make, especially beginners, of course, but even intermediates, I find. And we're going to try to rectify that by giving you some 2/5 secrets, some voicings and progressions that you can use and count on, not just with the tune that we're studying today, which is In Your Own Sweet Way by Dave Brubeck, but pretty much in any jazz standard that you can think of. So what I wanted to do today was give you something you could rely on when you face 2/5s in multiple keys. For example, the reason why we're using In Your Own Sweet Way today is because it is just an entire series of 2/5 progressions. I want to give a quick shout out to Jerry in Spain for suggesting this tune for today's live stream. And also a quick shout out to everybody that's here in the chat area. I will say hi personally in just a moment. Let's post the sheet music. Interesting thing about the sheet music today is you don't have to fill out a form to get it. It's just a link that's going to send you directly to the sheet music. So let me post that here. I'll pin it to the top of the chat. And you can go and grab that immediately. The site should be fast enough to handle that because there's no download page. Give me 1 second. Testing 1, 2, 3. Wow, my voice is really raspy. Okay, my voice is kind of raspy. I don't know about that, and I don't have a drink of water handy. I should have thought of that. I'm going to play the tune, and what I want you to listen for is a lot of 2/5 ideas, not just kind of like voicings and things like that, but try to listen for some inner voices. I haven't actually warmed up or even touched the piano. I actually just sat down because I was trying to get the download page functioning, but I couldn't do it. So I just posted the sheet music at that URL that you have. So I haven't actually touched the piano. So we'll see how this comes out. I will share the music with you momentarily on the screen. I'm going to put it up there for right now. So that's the sheet music you'll be downloading with the download link. Let me know that you were able to retrieve it. It should be easy today. And I'll get back to that in a moment. So again, just listen for the progression of 2/5s. Try to catch some inner voices. I'm probably going to play it a little slower to start just to get my fingers around the piano and get a little warmed up before I dive into some improvisation. And I'll come back and we'll talk about things. So we're talking 2/5s today. Stick around because we're going to have some fun. Yeah, Keith says the fastest download ever. That's because I wasn't able to capture any email addresses on the usual download page because I didn't have access to the admin area to do that. The website's been really funky all morning. I had the server guys take a look at it, and I think they might have sorted the issue, but at least you were able to grab the sheet music. So there we go with a little bit of In Your Own Sweet Way. I'm going to, and by the way, I'm not sure if I should have done a sound check first, but you can hear the piano okay. Please let me know. And the vocal mic is good. And let me throw the sheet music up on the screen. So this is the music that you just downloaded. I think the thing that I wanted to point out is if you take a look at the A section, well, actually even the bridge too, but take a look at the A section. You've got a 2-5 of G minor in the first bar. You got a 2-5 of F in the second bar, a 2-5 of B flat in the third bar. There's a B flat to E flat in the fourth bar, which is essentially, if you really thought about it, it's cycle of fifths. So it's 2-5 of A flat. Then you've got a 2-5 of G flat. Then you've got G flat to B. And then you've got a 2-5 of B flat at the end, which is a minor 2-5, C half diminished seventh to F7 flat 9. This one right here. I think it's best for me at this point to take a screenshot of this so I can do a little bit of writing on the screen to make things a little bit more clear. And of course, as always, your questions are important to everything that we do here on the Jazzmentl live stream. So any questions that you have would be appreciated. Keith says piano and voice are fine. That's always good to hear and good to know. All right. So the first mistake, or the biggest mistake that I think people make when it comes to 2-5 progressions. So there is a standard formula for 2-5 progressions. You probably use it already. And this is the mistake that people make. They tend to always rely on the 2-5, especially left-hand voicings that they have. So just for a moment, let's take a look at a C major 2-5. So you got D minor 9. So this is D minor, 1, 3, 5, and 7. And then you've got 9 on top. Throw out the root because the bass player usually plays that. So these are called rootless left-hand voicings. So you got 1, 3, 5, 7. Then you only have to change one note to make it 5, 7. This is a G7, 9, 13 chord. And then change the two outer notes to make it C major. So that's a standard major 2-5 progression. So why is that a bad thing? Well, in and of itself, it's not bad. What's bad about it is that you consistently do the same thing all the time. And that can really mess you up because if you're using the same left-hand chord voicings, then it limits you. It actually limits you to where you play. So for example, if my 2-5 is here and I want to right hand some voicings down here or some soloing, my hands are going to like cross over. So what you need is you need freedom. And what I tried to attempt to do in the left-hand voicings that I showed you in this chart is there's a consistency only in the fact that you have to catch certain notes of every single chord. You don't have to catch the whole chord. You certainly don't have to catch 3, 5, 7, and 9. But what you have to do is you have to catch either the chord tones themselves, which is the 3rd and the 7th. So for example, in A half diminished 7th, the 3rd would be the C, and the 7th would be the G. Okay, so that's an A half diminished 7th chord, and this is just the 3rd and the 7th. If you just play those two notes, then you're off and running. If you, in the case of half diminished 7th chords, if you play the root and the flat 5, you're good to go as well. So what I'm suggesting to you is you catch a couple of notes from each of the chords, either the root and the fifth, or the root and the third, or the root and the fifth, or the root and the seventh, or the third and the seventh, or whatever. You hear what I'm saying? It's like pick any two notes out of that chord, even the 5 and 7, and then what you try to do is put another note in there, or a third note that creates a better chord. So let's take a look at the very first one. So this chord right here. So what I've done is I've taken the third and the seventh and the flat 5 of the chord. Sorry, yes, third and this note down here, which isn't even part of the chord, but it is part of the scale, which I'll get to in just a second. So let's say we pick the root and the flat 5, any other note from the scale, you can match with it. So what I like to do is voice it in fourths. Now, I know that's a lot of information, and I try to make things as easy as possible, but if you're ever going to be able to improvise like this, what you need to understand is that the notes that I'm pulling are not just from the chord, they're from the scale. So the formula is chord tones, let's make it easy. Chord tones plus notes from scale equals creativity. So what you try to do is just think of the scale in the key of the moment. So A half diminished seventh to D7, right? We've got the sharp, we've got the third of D7 in that chord right there. So we're anticipating D7. And it's also covering notes from A flat diminished seventh because they're both from the scale. And it's voiced in fourths. So that's, I think if you just think voicing in fourths, which is, here's your tritone and there's a perfect fourth. We just went up in chromatics, you can do things like that, sidestep the chord or whatever. So, let me back up a little bit. Actually, you might be able to help me make it a little bit clearer if you shoot a question that makes sense. Definitely heard some force in there. Says, David, and his main interests are in the modulations. Yeah, okay. We'll talk about that in a second. I think if we were to make it a little bit easier, I think the formula makes sense, right? Chord tones plus any note from the scale means creativity. I think three-hand or three-note voicings are better than two-note voicings, although if you're doing a tritone, you don't really need another note in there to make that sound great. But if you want to add another note, I think whatever notes you choose, a note that's a fourth away from that. So for example, on the D7, this chord here anticipates the D7 chord. This one is the A flat diminished chord going to here. If you look at the tritone and a fourth above that, you get this voicing. It's also an A flat 7 chord. It's also a whole bunch of other chords, and I don't want to get into like swapping out dominant seventh chords for half diminished seventh chords and the whole ideas behind that. But what I'm trying to say is that voicing in fourths is probably the easiest thing. Just pick the third and the seventh and throw a fourth on top of that. Let's try that, for example, for a G minor chord. So in G minor 7 chord, if we pick the third and the seventh, That's a fifth, but you could also go a fourth on top of that, which gets you back to the third. So that's not the greatest example. Let's try something else. Let's go this way, where you've got the third and the seventh, and then go a fourth above that. So you get this chord. And if you want it to be more dissonant, you could try to mess around a little bit with the chord and make sure that it sounds what you want it to sound like. So let's try it for example, C7. So there's our third and our seventh. Go a fourth above that, you get this. You get a C7 sharp 9 chord. That's the same chord as this, by the way, which is the D7 sharp 9 chord. Okay? Let's try to play the head just using those left-hand chord voicings. Not the ones that I've written, but just this whole idea of force. So listen to this. Okay? So you can see it's a bit of a biting sound. So you kind of have to mess around with it a little bit. But what I'm doing is just playing force from the key of the moment. So for example, C minor 7 to F7 in the third bar, the key of the moment is B flat. If you went up the scale in force, you would get all of those different voicings, and all of them would apply almost for the C minor 7th and the F7, catching the tritone if possible. So I'm just pulling notes from the scale and voicing them in force. Right? Just going really just up the scale. And to me, that's the most creative way of playing the piano. Now, if I were to expand on that, the left-hand voicings meets the right-hand voicings in what we call block chords. Where the left hand and the right hand come together to make more creative ideas. You can't do this kind of thing. I mean, the hands are following each other down the piano. You can't do that unless you understand what the key of the moment is. So a 2-5 of G minor to 2-5 of F to a 2-5 of B flat. And all I'm doing is I'm actually moving the notes all down in that progression. Do you see what I'm trying to explain here? It's that even if you don't capture the full essence of the chord, as long as you've got notes from the scale to kind of emanate the chord, then you're free to move those progressions either down or up. Let's go up this time. Right? Or down. And that's the most fun you'll ever have playing the piano, because you understand that you're not confined to this type of voicing. You're moving in scales. You're moving progressions within the scales. So 2-5 progressions within the scales. So you'll notice when I started the solo, if the melody was this, if I'm soloing, I don't have to stick to those melody notes to make nice sounds. All I have to do is find the chords within those scales, like this. what's in my head anyway. I hope it makes sense. A good start to any of that would be to just copy the voicings that are here. So what I've tried to do is not use a formula for these voicings, but just give you some voicings that actually work. So if I played it exactly as written, this is it. One more time. So you'll notice that in the voicings, the only real consistency is the fact that every once in a while I'm throwing in these fourths, which is nice. And sometimes, like for example, on the 2-5 of G flat, which is this bar here, you've got this chord, and then it just changed. What does it do? You got that. Oh, sorry. The chord before. So the chord before the A flat is this one. So that actually moves A flat because the and of 4 and the and of 2 is what we're doing here. So this is the A flat minor 7 voicing, and then this is the D flat 7 voicing, and then G flat. So in the G flat chord, there's these minor seconds, which is kind of nice in the root. One more time. Now try to remember that you're playing on the and of 4 and the and of 2 with these voicings, where the bass player is covering the root. So these are all rootless voicings. So if we played this, for example, with the bass player, it would be like this. Let me try to do that again. So A half diminished, then we're down here, sorry. The idea. So you don't have to do, I mean, these are voicings that are typically played with a bass player because you're playing on the and of 4 and the and of 2. You're pushing the beat forward with swing. How fun is that? Let's check in and see if there's any comments. Richard says sharp 9, flat 13 seem to work well. Yep. Richard also, are you not restricted to having both the 3rd and the 7th? No, you're not. That's my point. So for example, on an A flat half diminished 7th chord, there's actually a tritone in here. And if you took that tritone and played a 4th above it, you get this chord. That's a perfect A flat or A half diminished 7th chord, but you don't actually have the 3rd and the 7th in there. So there's no such thing as restricting yourself. That's what I think confines people to a specific set of rules that says, oh, if I don't have the 3rd and the 7th, that chord's not going to sound right. Yes, it is, as long as you're picking some notes from the chord, but also from the scale itself. And that allows you to move around a lot easier. Marla says, thank you for making the download so much more accessible. Yeah, the reason why I usually put a download page, it's because there's usually a follow-up sequence, so it kind of goes into the CRM and sends you a few emails. But today I wasn't able to get that working. It also allows me to collect email addresses from new people, and that's how we function around here. But I appreciate the comment. We're probably going to go back to the original way today. Or sorry, next week. And yeah, at least it's easy for today. Alan says, I got a little lost. That's probably my issue, not yours. Would you please go back to the concept of the key of the moment and how that affects voicings and give another example? Okay. Let me see if I can make this easier. So the key of the moment is this. And let's just focus on the tune itself. So if we're in the tune Your Own Sweet Way, let me erase all of this stuff here. Let's just take these bars, for example. So this is a 2-5 of G minor. 2 minor 7 flat 5 to D7 flat 9 to G minor 7. Okay, what is the key of the moment? Well, the key of the moment is usually the destination chord. So the key of the moment is G minor, or its relative major, which is B flat. So the scale is this. Okay? So if I play that scale over the entire thing, for example, A half diminished 7th to D7 flat 9 to G minor 7. You can see that the scale works better over G minor 7th because there's no accidentals from all of these other chords. Okay, so that's number one. You have to understand what the key of the moment is. Typically what I try to do in voicing is to stay in that key of the moment. So not choose notes that are outside of this unless they come from the chord itself. So for example, if the chord is a D7 sharp 9 chord, this is the tritone, which you may or may not do. I think it's best in the case of dominant 7th chords to pick tritones and make sure they're part of your voicing. But this note, that note is not just a sharp 9, it comes from the scale. So if you play this and any other note from the scale, get the idea? All of those voicings are good. So if you're looking for a third note from your voicing, the easiest third note is the note that's a fourth away from the top of the voicing. So if this is our tritone, a fourth away is here, make sure that it's from the key of the moment, and you get this voicing, which is really nice. Let's do for A half diminished 7th. This is our A half diminished 7th chord. Let's not use the 3rd and the 7th this time. Let's use the root and the flat 5, which is also a good indicator of an A minor, A half diminished 7th chord. And let's do a fourth away from those things. Let's put them down here. So the flat 5 and the root, and let's go part of the scale a fourth above that. This note right here, part of the scale. And you get this chord. So 2 nice chords in a row. So like this. They're voiced in fourths, it's lovely. But the extra note is typically the fourth above the bottom 2 notes. It just comes from the scale. Let's check in and see if that answers your question. Please let me know. I would appreciate that. Alan. Amodi says, greetings here in the office. Good. Amodi also says, just got your download. Excellent. Madur says, using standard voicings when going the circle of fifth, I feel always restricted to always go descending, and I have to find a spot to jump back up. It's refreshing to see your flexibility going up. Thank you. And I think that's really the point. You can go down or up when you're doing 2/5 progressions. It doesn't matter. And as long as you're not jumping too much, like for example, if we're skipping from this chord to this chord, that's not very far. It's just like 3 semitones. So we're not moving around too much. Get the idea? Thank you for the question. Bill says, oh, the light bulb just went on. I can play any note in the scale of the prevailing harmony. Yes, you can. And that was really, I think, the answer to what most people do is come up with some kind of 2/5 formula, which is the worst thing you can do from a creative standpoint because it It boxes you in and keeps you in a space that is very confining and not that creative and certainly not improvisational. Alan said, now that was a great explanation. Okay. I'm glad you're into it. I'm into it. I love this stuff, right? To me, there's a lot of math, and that's just math, really. I got involved in a discussion, I think, on the Jazz Pianist group one day when somebody said music is math. That's all it is. I don't know. How does math explain rhythm? How does math explain feel? How does math explain modern harmonic progression from an improvisational standpoint? Does math explain this? No, that comes from within. So people who say music is only math, I think, kind of miss the whole point. It's a good idea to understand the math. That's a good start. It's like people say, what's a good expression? It's like, money won't make you happy. Yeah, it's a good down payment. Kind of stuff like that, right? Like, it's not, if you make these very exact statements, music is math, and that's all it is, I think that's really undervaluing the concept of music. Because if you want to do math, go do math. Pencil, paper, whatever. It can also be creative, but it certainly doesn't have sound. It certainly doesn't get in your soul as like music does. So yeah, math is a good start, and it's a good idea to understand the math, but that's all it is. It's a good start. Okay. And this is when we're talking about this, right? Tritones and fourths, picking notes from the scale, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to the root. It's math, right? I understand that, but it can't explain everything. Okay. Are there any other questions? Because I would like to just do one more thing today, not to overwhelm everybody, but I did want to talk about one more thing, and it does have to do with In Your Own Sweet Way. But I don't want to leave this subject until everybody's satisfied that we understand the concept. You may not be able to implement the concept yet, but just an understanding of it is the most important thing. So can I get someone to say, okay, Paul, it's time to move on? Or questions would be good. Just erase this. Because I want to talk about this. And what that is, and where it came from, and why it's even there. That's where I want to go next. Alan says, I do have another question. I'm waiting for it, though. So Marla gets it. That's good. Alan, okay, here's the question. In the first measure in the B section, how does your approach explain the A7 voicing, since the C is not part of D major? That's a nice catch. I can explain it, and I will do that. So he's talking about, he's talking about right here. So this is what is known as, to some people, as a deceptive cadence. So it is a 2-5, but that 2-5 is not of D major. What is it a 2-5 of? So I think this is what is going to be easily explained. So it's deceptive. In other words, there's this cadence that's happening, but it doesn't go where it should go. It doesn't go to D minor. So for example, E half diminished seventh to A7 to D minor. There's a lot of tunes that do that, for example. tune. You get the idea? What is it in? It's like... anyway, doesn't matter. It's like senior's moment. But that's what I'm trying to explain here. It's like you've got a 2-5 of D minor, not of D7. So how does that explain not being part of the D minor scale? It's because we're temporarily in D minor, but Dave Brubeck flipped the script on us and he said, hey, don't go there. Go to D major. So he starts off in minor. The melody note is C, which is not part of the D major 7 scale, right? And then he switches. Instead of... So he flips the script a little bit there. So that explains that. It's like, it's out of place. It's deceptive in its nature. The destination chord is D major, but we're temporarily in D minor. Hope that answers your question. Yes, one might then call the deceptive cadence consistent with borrowing from the minor key of the moment. Correct. That's what I would say. Exactly. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to delete this off your screen momentarily. And let's go take a look at this. So you'll notice it's not the perfect way to write 8 bars, but it's close enough, right? It's like in finale, you would have to do a whole bunch of things to change sort of that bar that's underneath the 8, right? It's like a bar with 2 lines on each end. And I'm referring to this thing right here. Let's just assume that that's 8 bars of playing. So it's called an interlude in E-flat Dorian. So E-flat Dorian is the key of D-flat, right? You went up the scale. That's an E-flat Dorian scale because it's the second note scale of D-flat major. If we went to 5, which is A-flat 7, that's a Mixolydian scale back to 1, which I think is Ionian. I don't know. I never really learned my modes from name. I just kind of know them from key of the moment. But anyway, I know this is E-flat Dorian. Okay. Locrian? What is 1 major 7? Is that a Locrian scale? Anyway, somebody can let me know. So, what did I want to point out here? Well, this 8 bars of playing, this interlude, happens every section. So you'll notice when I'm improvising, if I got to the end, and then I switch to this interlude over E-flat pedal, so where did it come from? It came from Dave Brubeck's performance of the tune. If you actually go listen to the album when this first came out, he's got that 8 bars happening every time the form goes through. So the form is AABA, 32 bars, and then it adds 8 bars. So the actual tune is 40 bars long. A little weird. But this interlude is kind of like a break from all of the chords. It's almost like he said, yes, I put so many chords in this tune, 2 chords per bar for pretty much 32 bars. We need a break from all of that, and we need to make things easier on ourselves and make a nice musical interlude. So they came up with this E-flat Dorian interlude. So the way to play this and improvise on this is actually really easy. You would just choose notes from one of 2 scales. So the first scale is written here. This is number 1. You pick the notes from the Dorian scale. The other one that you can add is the E flat minor bebop scale, just to kind of give you a little bit more flexibility. The passing note in that scale is a G natural. And that allows you to do certain things like this, like a very bebop-y things. Listen to that. There's like a chromatic passing notes, which is really the flavor of bebop, and all of these enclosures like this. Getting to the third of the chord, right? Dabba-dooba bebop, right? And so that bebop scale kind of gives you an extra kind of flavor over top of the E flat Dorian mode. So what I do is like a McCoy-Tyner approach to this thing, where I'm plunking down either just like octaves, or I'm plunking down E flat and B flat, which is 1 and 5. That's more of a McCoy-Tyner thing. And then I'm playing left-hand voicings from the formula that I gave you earlier, which is just to play notes in fourths from the scale. And even if you missed a note like I did at the top, it doesn't really matter. What matters is most of the notes are from the scale, right? It's a very obviously, and I'm going to put the word, I know you've got it in your head, but let me just write it here. It's very modal to do this. Why is it modal? Because it's a mode. It's actually two modes. It's E flat Dorian, and it's also bebop. Not that minor bebop scales are a mode, but they are because they're a scale. I wouldn't know what you call them other than a bebop scale. And that's the other thing that I think you need to play this tune, is that approach. So just one more time, plunk down 1 and 5 in the left hand, and then play fourths from the scale. And then in the right hand, you can bebop your way to happiness. Yeah. Practice that all day long. You can change the key. Some people do actually. They play 8 bars of that, and then they'll sidestep it to E minor. Which tune, by the way, does that idea come from? That's the trivia question for today. Not that we always have trivia questions, but that's a good one. Which tune does this come from? Going from E flat minor to E minor. Back to E flat. Now, it's not the original key of the tune that I'm thinking about, but what tune is it? There is one tune that's all it does. It goes back and forth from, say 1 minor to flat 2 minor. And that's all it does, the entire tune. Just those 2 chords. Yes, Jerry says, so what? Of course. It's like, ba-da-ba-dee-doo. So it would go from D minor to E flat. interestingly enough, when Dave Brubeck came out with In Your Own Sweet Way, So What was already a big hit. So maybe he got the idea from there. Everybody's grabbing something that's relevant for the time. All right, let's play the tune again. This time I'm just going to play it straight swing. I don't need to warm up anymore. I don't think, anyway. Let's play it straight swing and see what we can make out of this. But before I do that, I wanted to show you something really cool. You probably saw this, which is the third page of the download. I kind of included it there. So what is this? So what happened was, going back, I don't know, maybe a month, I did a masterclass on Saturday for Nancy with a Laughing Face. And I played 2 renditions of this very amazing standard. Of course, I dedicated them to my wife, Nancy, at the time. And I just got the transcription back yesterday. Now, if I was able to put the download page together, you would have received an email with the coupon code. But this was the fastest way to do it because I couldn't access the back end of the website to do it. So all I did was I created this page. There's a hyperlink here that says buy now at 40% off. And if you use the coupon code Nancy40, not with the exclamation mark, just Nancy40, I think that will be evident when you get there, you can grab 40% off. It's only valid until Sunday night, midnight. But what I will tell you this, if you just go there and listen to the performance and read the description. I don't use things like AI to write descriptions for those things. I just kind of sat there and went, what is it about this song that I'm so happy with? And the transcription, I watched the transcription go by from our transcriber, and I listened to the solo, and I went to myself, this is probably the most accurate transcription that he's ever done, because it completely captures the essence of the tune, right? The way that the notes are spaced, rhythms and things like that. I will tell you, it's probably the best transcription and solo piano performance I have ever done. And for those of you that probably think, oh, they're maybe all the same, or some are a little bit better than others, I wrote the description for this, and I'm extremely proud of this piece of music. It's 9 pages long. And if you only ever buy one piece of sheet music from me in your entire existence, and you get the chance to obviously support the channel at the same time, if you only ever buy one, this is the one to buy. There is so much language in that thing. I don't know what I was on that day, but I was on some kind of high because I listened to the performance and I watched the sheet music go by. Like I said, if I were you and I was in your shoes and I heard that and I had access to the sheet music for that performance, I wouldn't care if it was $100. I would buy it because I know that it would take me the next 5 years to pull all the language out of that to apply to my playing. That's how valuable it is. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So if you get the chance, go to the third page of your download, click the link, grab the coupon code, at least go listen to it. The video is embedded right on the thank you page. Right on the page that you click through. Okay, so go grab that. I'd appreciate it. And I'm sure you will too. Anyway, let me play the tune again in your own sweet way, and let's see what we can make out of this. Yeah, Ben, you're welcome for the free download. It's my pleasure. Hey, man, I'm a beginner. Cosmos. I haven't seen you here before. Are you new? Maybe let me know. Hey, man, I'm a beginner. I've learned all the minor, major, and dominant sevenths around the circle of fifths, all the scales around it as well, but I'm not sure where to go now. Any advice? Yes. Obviously, I don't have the details of what you mean by learning major and minor sevenths. And are you talking about chord voicings? Are you talking about scales? I mean, obviously you said all the scales around it. So chord voicings, I guess, are included in that. Modi, thank you so much. I appreciate your patronage, I guess is the best word for it. You do a great job of supporting the channel and everything we do here. I appreciate that. Let's answer this question. So I think the advice that I would have is, have you really worked through the whole concept of swing? And there's a lot of YouTube videos that I talk about swing on the Jazzmentl channel. So maybe just go to the channel and look for the keyword swing and see if you come across any videos that can help you sort of tackle that part of it. Because there's swing in everything. I don't care if it's bossa nova or boogaloo or whatever, it's all swing. Even if it's rock music, there's still swing in there. You just have to feel it on 2 and 4 and on the ands of the beats. And that's how great improvisation is created. The other thing that I would start to look at, because you know the scales around the cycle of fifths, is take a look at bebop scales. Major bebop scales, minor bebop scales, dominant seventh bebop scales. There's basically 3 of them. There's a bunch of alterations to those, but those are the 3 main ones: major, minor, and dominant bebop scales. That would be the next step for you. So learning swing, getting that in your soul, and tackling bebop scales so you have a bigger facility for improvisation. So for example, bebop scales on something like this. Bebop scales tend to define things a little bit more rather than just float. So like this. Right? They are a more exacting way of getting chromatics into your playing. So that's what I would suggest next. And there is opportunities on the Jazzmentl channel, not just with the live stream recordings that are there from the past year or so, but also from all of the videos. There's over 500 of them on the Jazzmentl channel. Hopefully that will help you a lot. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the question. We've reached the end of our time for today. I hope you enjoyed the music. It was really fun to play this tune. Thanks again to Jerry for suggesting it, who is also here today. And I appreciate all of you for coming today. By the way, Jerry, I'm not sure if you know, but you're the one that actually picked the Nancy with the laughing face version to go get transcribed. The 9 pages that we just talked about, it was your idea too. So thank you, Jerry, for all the great ideas you've been giving me over the last little while. It's been very helpful to me and everyone else who wants to shout out suggestions and send me emails. I appreciate all of you for doing that, because none of this would work without you. Modi says, by the way, thank you for introducing me to swing as well as the concept of a chorus. Yeah, we talked about that in the paid masterclass the other day. It made so much sense. You're very welcome. This is a plug for the monthly master. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that today because I've really sort of talked about the Nancy with the laughing face transcription. Even if you don't intend to buy it, go listen to the recording, which is on the page for the link. Just go listen to it. I listened to it myself several times, and I was like, there's some good playing in there. I know it sounds a little bit like I'm patting myself on the back, but in all humility, if I were listening to that and I knew there was a transcription for that, I'd be like, I'm all in. All right. Thanks so much for your time today. Have a great rest of your Saturday, whatever time of day it is, morning, afternoon, or evening. And even if it's tomorrow for you, enjoy your Sunday. I don't think there's anything else. No more housekeeping. So again, my name is Paul Toby. It's been fun. I'll see you next time. Next Saturday, same time, same place.